Hello everyone. Rod, good presentation. It's refreshing to see. I gave Rod a bit of stick last night, so it's nice to see some of the stuff you're doing. I'm going to walk around the stage because my watch tells me to. My name is Paddy Ryan, CEO of Gog & Muller Group, project management consultancy, with a focus on digital technology, BIM implementation. And off the back of that, we've developed our first platform and application called PlanLoader, which essentially does all of the workflows and processes that we've learned over the last 8 to 10 years and built it into an app. Look, if you want to know more about it, we're outside, we're not going anywhere. There's a website there for you guys to look at. But today is probably a bit more important to give you guys kind of a story, something that you guys can take away and maybe bring back to your organization, your business, or deal with some of your own colleagues. And hopefully you guys can take something from it. And I'll try and go through this as quick as I can. A lot of people are probably quite hungry. Who is the clicker? Sorry, it's over here. Great. So I'll set the scene. This is George. So George can be anybody. George can be you. It can be the person sitting beside you. The point really with George is he's not allergic to technology. And what we've found in this industry as we've come into this digital revolution is there's a lot of people who are burying their heads in the sand. They're allergic to this technology. So the point of the presentation is try to be like George. George here he's a project manager, a typical project manager on any job. George, as a project manager, has his finger in a lot of pies, so he could work from anywhere from design, QA, QC, commissioning, etc. But the most important pie that George has just baked is the one that's going to connect all the dots. It's going to make George think digitally. It's the data pie. This pie is expensive, has expensive ingredients. There's software out there. The job that we last came off of, for example, was using 14 different software applications to get into one deliverable, which was quite mad, but I'm sure that happens on any job that you guys are on. And with the software comes the hardware to use it, mobile devices on the side, heavy laptops, BIM stations, etc. And they all come at a cost. So that's typically the biggest issue on site, isn't it? George typically ends up falling out with the commercial team, the QS. And we've all either been on the receiving end of this or we've dished it out. And that's probably the biggest barrier, as they say, to BIM that people publicly talk about anyway. So George, because he's a project manager, he uses his domain expertise. So he's the PM getting involved in technology, and I say this a lot to people. It's these people, it's the people that are coming into this digital revolution from the experience side, people who've done the graft, who've failed and succeeded off the back of failure. Whereas you've other people who come into this industry with very tech-focused ability, but don't have the same experience as George might as a project manager. And I think to become that ideal Model T or Type T individual, the project manager, he's the favorite, isn't he? He or she is the favorite because they have the experience, they just need to learn the tech, and the tech, you'll see, is not that hard. It's actually a lot of the time common sense. So George can go from one area where he worked in paper-based, no data, to a space where you can very quickly learn it and become an expert. So we'll lift the hood here a little bit. We'll give you a kind of an example of this actually working. And sorry for the graphics, but it's the only way that we can quite explain it simply. In construction, you've got typically a build sequence, so your construction program. And if you work in the BIM world, there's a thing called a coordination sequence, and I'm sure some of you will be aware of this. And the example I'll give you is from projects that I'm used to working on, which is data centers. Now this is very simple. There's obviously a lot of other stuff that goes into a data center, but just from a high level perspective, just to get your thought process going. As you build it, you would typically build from the top down. So you'd have your high level sprinkler, your mains, you'd have your ducts, duct drops, you'd have your ceiling grid, you'd have a hot oil containment, and you'd have your racks, okay? And that's how you build it. But actually, when you're coordinating this in BIM, you have to think completely, sometimes the opposite. So in terms of coordination, the guys at the very end, the guys who come in at the very end of the job and fit the racks are actually the most important people. In terms of coordination, they are number one to get locked down. Because if that rack moves even 10 mil, it will actually affect the connection detail through the Z bracket to the hack, which will change the entire ceiling grid, which will move all duct drop services, lighting, etc. And this has happened. So it's George been able to use his knowledge, his general knowledge from site, this detail that typically a techie might not necessarily understand. This is where he's going to see the power. And then to take it one step further, so that's the sequence. What you'll do is you'll identify your sequence of build, you'll identify your model coordination sequence, and then you'll step that out, you'll figure out what way they're going to go build this job. So you'll step out your site, whatever your job is. It doesn't necessarily have to be a data center, it can be whatever job you're working on, you just have to figure this out for yourself. And from this is a bit exaggerated, but you can see here, I don't know if there's a laser on this, but what I just went through with you in terms of the sequence is literally just this step here. Okay, that was the first point, the first slide. But all of this has to happen too. And it was, you kind of went through it on the last presentation as well. You know, it's management. You manage all your sheets, and it's great to see. But because area 1 up here is where we're going first, it's our build sequence. It's the most important area. There's no point worrying about issues that are over in area 5, 6, and 7 when area 1 is the main concern. I know it sounds silly, but this sometimes isn't thought about. And from that, you have to kind of look at your dates. Everything is your build dates. Everything is programmable. To me, it is. And you might be building on the 24th of November, and you might think, we don't need to worry about this for a few months. We're in February, we're in March. It's a bit exaggerated because I've put in lead time of 18 weeks for steel or whatever it is, but it gets the point across. You know, you need to be worrying about some of these things a lot sooner than you realize. If you want to get your tech submittals in, approved, your approval process, your drawings approved and signed off, and have your information for a site. And then this is literally for one area. So this is area 1. We now have a date of the 24th to the 3rd, and that's when we need to lock that area down, get the tech subs out, get the drawings through the fabrication process, and order our material. So what we do typically is project manage a BIM model. We put dates to every area, every zone. It can be a room, it can be whatever you want it to be. And off the back of that, we break the BIM model down into these areas and put numbers to it. Because what I was told a long time ago was, what do I care about 10,000 clashes or 20,000 clashes in a model? What use is that to me? But when you can actually go back to a director, project manager, and tell him that here's your impact. There's actually 12 issues in a certain area that are going to affect your delivery, going to affect your build. Now you're kind of speaking their language. This is kind of, I suppose, an idea of what it can look like. So there's vast amount of tools out there. We all know them. There's lots of different softwares. But this is kind of where the information gets sorted out. So typically we typically would break this into tiers. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is you must sort this out. Tier 2 is it needs to be sorted, but we might get away with it. And 3 is something that we can cross over. And this example here was actually work we did during the pre-con design phase for a big client for a data center. And what we found, and again, I'll give you a kind of a look under the hood of just simple things. The model was coordinated, great. The drawings and tech spec were issued out. And what a lot of people don't do, which is mad in my opinion, is cross-check between the typical detail, the specification, and the model. Because the model was coordinated, it was clash-free, or so we thought. But when we actually did a little bit of a deeper dive, we've actually found that it didn't match what was in the tech spec. It didn't match what was in the specified drawing. And when we did model it to the detail of the drawing, it was a huge impact and could have potentially have been a huge impact and risk on the project. But we captured it in pre-con, we captured it in pre-IFC. This was literally one of, I think it was 558 issues we captured in total that were like serious issues. Yeah, there was thousands of clashes off the back of it, but these 558 were really going to impact and put risk on the project. So George, who has now learned all this, he's using his skills, his ability, he's now starting to build a digital strategy. He's now starting to identify where information comes, where it flows through, and who needs to see it. Now he can have a bit of fun, because a lot of this stuff is easy. So George built a website, right? Sounds mad, it's not. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, and it's actually so cheap. You can virtually build a website for free, and if I can build it, I'm sure everyone here can as well. And off the back of this website, it's just allowing the users who George might have been like a year ago to have the ability to come into this area and see what George sees, use the data that George is collecting. And you can build whatever you want in here. And there's huge ROIs on this. Like, to be very honest with you, I actually wrote these numbers down and cut them in half because the numbers were so mad that I was like, I can't stand up on stage and stand over them. But there's huge savings. Like, it's colossal in this industry, the areas where we can save, improve productivity. And this was based on a site data center project with 1,200 staff. Simple things like, I know you mentioned Bluebeam, but to create an API and put Bluebeam drawings from a project directly into BIM 360 Field. And I know this sounds silly, but on a data center project with a site that's 298 acres, someone to walk up and down from that site takes 25 minutes. There's a bus, literally, that takes people up and down the site. So having that on their mobile device live on BIM 360 Field is extremely powerful. So George and the QS's make up, the make piece, for now, because he's going to come at them again for more money. So how do you be like George? This is the thing, and again, I'll try and give you something to take away with this and give you some of the experiences that we've had and some of the cool stuff and the software and the stuff that we've done, and show you how it works. So firstly, you literally do not need a computer science degree. It's the biggest thing in the industry. People are afraid of it. You need to understand program. You need to understand your commercials. You need to be a project manager, in my opinion. Like the BIM manager role has adapted hugely in the last literally only 5 years. Like in 4 or 5 years ago, we literally spent most of our week being a BIM manager, federating a model. And Glue came along and does it for us, which allowed BIM managers to adapt more into a project manager role. And that's where I think it's going. I think project managers, digital project managers, is going to be the next role in construction. I think project managers are just going to upskill and take it over. If you're operating in a project that says they're doing level 2 BIM, and this is what you're doing, you're not actually bringing in your supply chain, you're not building out a sequence, you're not linking it into your schedule, then you need to stop, you need to reshuffle the deck. If you're looking for a needle in the haystack, that's when BIM is a waste of money. You know, if your team, and I've seen this time and time again, if your team is made up of literally 98% of people doing it the traditional way, and to look like they're doing BIM, they've just put some person in the corner and just looks like they're playing Minecraft and said, you just do the BIM. If you're doing that, it's a waste of money. You know, it's pointless because it's there to be used. There's huge benefits to be made out of it. So why would you stop there? And this is something I put up in London last year at an event, and it kind of typified, I suppose, what's in my head in terms of what we're taught about in the industry. And it's true, and bottom left or right, whatever way you're looking at it, that's probably the biggest barrier in the industry is procurement, it's cost, it's who signs the checks when it comes to digitalising this game. So in my opinion, George is a genius beyond his years. So you've heard it, we do level 2 BIM, we use BIM 360 Glue, we use virtual reality. Again, these are all great if you do them, but you need to make sure that you're using it in the right way. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this in use and where it can be useful. This is not a definitive list, there's loads of other uses for it, but this is just our experiences. So VR, I used to think it was a gimmick. To a degree, it kind of is, but it does have its benefits. So going back to what we spoke about earlier, that sequencing of a construction project, that part just before you spit out your drawings, we all know it can take a long time on jobs to cut drawing sheets and annotate them. So why not offer the client to come in and look at this prior to spending a lot of time cutting sheets, cutting drawings, going to fabrication? Allow them in, and it, in theory, should reduce the amount of negative cycles in the approval process. You know, and it's worked really, really well. It's a great tool to be able to bring in and show them. But you can use VR in so many different areas. But the point is here, and on the next couple of slides, is make sure you have a goal and, I suppose, an objective for what you're going to bring in, what software you're going to use, and strategize that whole thing out. UAV, drones, I don't know if they're used much here or not. We're using them quite a lot on some of the sites back home in Dublin. I mean, the power of them is phenomenal. Like, they can make the site safer. You can do inspections with them. The amazing cameras on them. Like, you can do overlays of your CAD files onto your site for progress planning. You can do quantification. It's so powerful to the level of details that these can come to now. You can see they operate in a 3D environment as well. So your logistics, like, it's phenomenal. And again, I really am starting to see project managers using this. This isn't a BIM thing. This is just a drone, a couple of grand, a license, out you go, and it literally pays for itself almost immediately. Laser scanning, look, I would not go on a job without laser scanning. That is an absolute fact. I'll never ever try never ever to go on a job without laser scanning again, because it is just so vital. And again, it's when you use it the right way. And just like with coordination and project management, you have to build out a schedule and a sequence of how you're going to use laser scanning. It's the same. If you go and spend 60, 70 grand on a laser scanner and just throw it onto site and expect it to work, it's not. It won't pay for itself. But if you build it into your sequence of work, so you build it into areas where I'm going to check at specific times, specific crew members after their install, you can save so much. These are, and trust me, there is a lot worse than this, but if I put some of this stuff up that I have in my arsenal, I'd probably get a red laser light on my chest here and I'd be taken out. But it's simple. Like, there's a door in literally, I don't know what, 500 mil out of place, 600 mil out of place, but like, that's a small thing, but it's non-compliant. And if it was captured eventually in the as-built, either it would be accepted, or if there was regulations saying that it couldn't be in that place, there's huge rework, you know, and that's the issue. And on this particular project, I think we had over 1,800 good catches, as we call them, with laser scans. It gives you an absolute image and as-built of a room when it's handed over, and it completely resolves disputes on site because there is no arguing with a laser scan. We used it to give you a good KPI from laser scanning. On phase one of a particular project, we had 94 builders work requests, which was essentially a cost against the GC. On phase two, because we started just putting laser scanning process in place, the crew on site, the guys could see that it was coming behind them. They knew that this was being checked, and the builders works went down to 56, I think, and in phase three they went down to 6 from 93 in 3 phases. That's phenomenal, and the cost that was saved there paid for the scanner, I'd say, about 10 times over. So it's how you use it. And then the big topic that everyone seems to be talking about, and myself included, is data. Like, the power of data is phenomenal. Like, some of the stuff that we've shown you and some of the data that you'll see in these screen grabs are, in my opinion, amateur, but it's like we've created fire for the first time in some projects. You know, like, and you see it all over the world. I mean, there's political campaigns, either ethically on it or unethically, are using data, but they're winning, aren't they? So why aren't we doing the same thing? You know, building, I've seen you guys had Power BI and things like that. You know, you're just taking data that's already there, it's freely available for you for now. Use it. If you've got the likes of Aconex or Conject or BIM 360 or whatever it is, use that data to tell you where you are on a project as a project manager, instead of not knowing or having to ring someone or walk down and look on site. It's literally there to tell you where you are in terms of your performance. And again, it goes back to the strategy, it goes back to how you build this out. You know, again, you can have data, but if you don't know what to do with it, then you may as well have a cat. But here you have something that you can structure. Here you have something that you can actually improve yourself as a project manager and reduce the risk on your project. These are literally just images that we've put together, and they're so simple. Like, it's literally so simple. There's no smart stuff here. Building a website, creating buttons on a website to be able to visualize and show the project manager the root causes of issues, what work week these issues typically happen, so that he can plan it into his 12-week look ahead. You know, what's the discipline that typically messes up? And then again, Georgie boy comes in and he just builds simple how-to videos and hosts it onto the website. There's all really easy wins, low-hanging fruit that I call them, with very little overhead cost, you know, and the power of it's huge. And I suppose the point is, you take George as an example, and George in my head is a site foreman on one of the data center projects. He literally used an iPad for a doorstop. That is so true. So he did not want to know anything about technology, but what this guy did know was phenomenal. He knew far, far more than I did. And that's the point. He had great ideas, but he did not know the power of data. And if he did know the power of data, he starts to be able to bring in workflows like this. We had cold aisle modules on a data center across 4 data halls. And we built these off-site, drove them up to the yard, wheeled them in, and popped them up. And it saved like 9 weeks on our program. Took 9 weeks off our overall program. But the George that I know asked a simple question. He was like, Jesus, wouldn't it be great if we could track this and we could monitor going through, so I'm not having to take a phone call, or I'm not having to go through paperwork to figure out where things are. And I was like, you can do that. Explain to me what these are. So I didn't know what a cold line module was the first time he told me about it, but he explained it, and all we simply did was put QR codes on them and RFID tags, and allowed it that when it passed through a particular point, we actually mapped it to BIM 360 field checklist, and that checklist would, the data we would extract into a CSV file and host up to the cloud and pull it back into BIM 360 Glue. As I say it sounds complicated, but it's really not. But the end of it, George, as a project manager in a job, was immediately able to visualize where every one of these cold line modules were and where he was against his program. Tell me that's not power. This is a short clip of that essentially working. So you can see he's scanning, reviewing it, doing its check, scanning the QR code, doing his checklist, signing it off, and that immediately would update the model. This is the Holy Grail.
Previously known as the Goal Command Room, this was a space where we highlighted all our project issues, hot topics and progress broken down to each trade in order to manage this gigantic project efficiently. The workflows allowed a lean operation where issues and root causes were brought to the surface very quickly, to a point which was visual, where we could manage and resolve. This was all displayed in a mixture of different displays, including marker on a whiteboard, magnetic red flags, and printouts on A4 sheets stuck to the board for progress visuals. Data in its simplest form can be anything. When someone on site fills out a checklist and signs it, the data can be used to identify progress at a high level. When someone on site raises an issue against a subcontractor, data can be used to monitor snags and closeout rates. We currently have a multitude of great visual platforms and trackers which aid our day-to-day project management. These are the main reasons to how we successfully manage big projects such as this one. So we start asking ourselves, why are we using whiteboards? This information was quickly out of date, so the idea of the digital command room was born. All the package boards are now digitized and linked to live data which is pulled automatically from site. Key information for project controls of each subcontractor is displayed on a visual management board. Data on safety, quality, program, histograms, last planner, RFI, drawing registers, fabrication leads, etc. all at the touch of a finger.
In relation to these boards you see behind us, we use data analytics in order to give us a visual representation of progress on our site. There seems to be a fear when it comes to data and data analysis in this industry. We've been collecting data quite successfully for probably the last 10 to 15 years. The only difference now is we start to utilize this data to give us a true graphical representation of big data center projects such as this one in Clonee. I think when implementing systems and platforms such as this, it's quite important that the direction comes right from the top. It's obviously important that your leaders are also visionaries, and of course it also helps when you've got a team on site that are willing to adapt and change to this new technology. I think looking back, the scope that was actually given to implement this platform, our director, Ray, wanted to be like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. The sky is the limit when it comes to this digital command room. We're using this for meetings such as last planner constraints, where we utilise the software BIM 360 Plan to introduce swim lanes and roadblocks to weekly tasks. We use the board to view weekly drone progress on site, and we also use the board to take part in BIM coordination meetings.
So that's that. Don't act like you're not impressed, okay? The power is savage, it really is. And it's been great to be part of that project. And that was literally the scope. I was given a one-liner scope from the director. He literally was like, I just want to be like Tom Cruise. He did not give me any other detail, that was it. But all jokes aside, he was, and he is probably the most inspirational person I've ever worked under. Because although he didn't know a whole lot about technology, what he did know is the power of what he could achieve. And he knew that this was possible, and he drove it on. He was from the top. That came literally from the top. And that's what you need. He needs people that are going to sign the check. They're the barriers. But it's, as I said, the sky's the limit. There really is anything you can do with this, and it's completely, it's invaluable. How can you put a value on this? How can I give you an ROI back on this? Everything that you see is actually live. There is no hiding. Some of the scariest meetings happen in this room because there is no hiding, but that's a good thing. You know, you're completely transparent, which is another reason why BIM and digital technology is been slow to be adapted in this industry, because it's too transparent, right? So yeah, I think if you take anything from this, look, try if you can, or if you know someone that is in their comfort zone, try and come out of it. You know, you come out of your comfort zone, you can achieve a lot. And be a bit more like George. Thank you very much.